Imagine standing on a hillside in East Africa 100,000 years ago. Your brain is the same size as yours right now. Your capacity for wonder is fully operational. The sky and stars are the same, but everything at ground level, the animals, the plants, the coastlines, the forests, the glaciers, and the depth of the seas, is different in ways ranging from subtle to staggering. The Earth that early humans looked at every morning was a genuinely alien version of the planet we inhabit today. A world the maps don't show. Start with water, specifically where it was. Sea level is not fixed. It responds to the amount of water locked in glaciers on land. When ice builds up, sea levels drop. When ice melts, they rise. During the last glacial maximum, around 20,000 years ago, sea levels were roughly 120 meters lower than they are today. That number rewrites the world map so completely that someone looking at both versions would struggle to believe they were the same planet. At 120 meters lower, enormous areas of today's ocean floor were dry, habitable land. The North Sea did not exist. Britain was not an island. You could walk from London to Amsterdam across a vast plain archaeologists call Doggerland, a landscape of rivers, wetlands, and forests that supported human populations for thousands of years before rising seas swallowed it between 6,000 and 8,000 years ago. Mammoth bones and Mesolithic tools dredged up by fishing nets from the North Sea floor are its ghosts. The Persian Gulf was largely a river valley where people lived and hunted for tens of thousands of years. Beringia was not a narrow strip, but a subcontinental landmass hundreds of kilometers wide, now under the Bering Sea, with no surface trace of the people who crossed it to first enter the Americas. Sumatra, Java, and Borneo were joined to mainland Asia in a single peninsula geologists call Sundaland, larger than India, entirely drowned since. Australia and New Guinea were a single continent called Sahul. The crossing from Sundaland to Sahul around 65,000 years ago required navigating at least 70 to 90 kilometers of open ocean, demanding watercraft and navigational intent. People looking out at open water understanding there was something on the other side worth reaching. They were sailors. Entire populations lived on these drowned landscapes. They raised children there, learned the local plants and animals, and understood their world through specific places that no longer exist above water. The stories they told about those places were passed down as the water rose until the landscapes described were beneath the waves, and the stories began sounding like myth. Some researchers argue that persistent flood narratives across human cultures, the biblical flood, the Mesopotamian story of Utnapishtim, flood traditions in Hindu texts, Aboriginal Australian accounts of the sea rising to drown coastal lands, are distorted cultural memories of real inundations, passed down across thousands of years until the specific geography was lost, but the emotional truth remained. The floods happened. The lands went under. People had to move. The sky they slept under, and the animals they shared the world with. The night sky over a Paleolithic campfire was something no person alive today in any city has ever seen. Not because the stars were different, but because the darkness was absolute in a way modern humans have almost no reference for. Roughly a third of humanity cannot see the Milky Way from where they live. Ancient humans experienced true unpolluted darkness every night of their lives. The Pleiades star cluster appears in astronomical and navigational traditions from Australia to North America to Africa to Europe, almost always associated with the same seasonal events: planting, harvest, fish runs, and the beginning of rains. These 7 bright stars served as a natural calendar, and navigation by stars and lunar cycles was survival infrastructure as much as spectacle. The world that early modern humans inhabited was full of large animals in a way the modern world simply is not. In Africa, where Homo sapiens evolved 100,000 years ago, it was significantly richer in large animal diversity than today. multiple elephant and rhinoceros species, giant buffalo with horns spanning 2 meters, and big cat species now entirely extinct. In Europe and Asia, the picture was more dramatic. Woolly mammoths stood up to 3.5 meters at the shoulder, with tusks up to 4 meters long and weight exceeding 6 tons. Cave lions, larger than any modern lion, hunted alongside cave hyenas, significantly bigger than spotted hyenas today. Giant deer, the megalocaris, carried antler spans of 3.7 meters, wider than a modern car. Cave bears shared the same cave systems humans used for shelter, making an unoccupied cave worth fighting over. Aurochs, wild cattle ancestral to every domestic breed alive today, stood nearly 2 meters at the shoulder. When early Homo sapiens moved into Europe around 45,000 years ago, they walked into all of this. The paintings on the walls of Lascaux, Chauvet, and Altamira are portraits from life, made by people who watched these animals with the intimacy that comes from sharing a world with something that is simultaneously food and predator. In the Americas, humans arriving around 15,000 years ago found megafauna so abundant it makes modern Africa look restrained. Woolly mammoths and mastodons, giant ground sloths the size of small elephants, glyptodonts the size of small cars with spiked tails, short-faced bears faster than any modern bear, American lions, American cheetahs, dire wolves, native horses, camels, tapirs, and saber-toothed cats with canine teeth up to 28 centimeters long. All of it was gone within a few thousand years of human arrival, continent after continent, with timing consistent enough globally that it is difficult to fully exonerate our species. Climate, silence, and the cost of wonder, the vegetation was equally different. Between roughly 11,000 and 5,000 years ago, a shift in the African monsoon system transformed what is now the world's largest hot desert into grasslands, lakes, and rivers populated by hippos, crocodiles, elephants, and humans. Communities who fished and herded cattle beside lakes that no longer exist. Rock art at the Tassili Niger Plateau in Algeria shows cattle herding and animals that now live thousands of kilometers away. When the Sahara dried, the people who lived there had to leave, many likely moving toward the Nile Valley and contributing to the population pressures that eventually produced ancient Egypt. The desert that feels permanent was, in recent human terms, a fundamentally different place. The climate itself oscillated faster than we tend to assume, with some transitions between glacial and interglacial conditions happening over timescales of centuries. For humans living through those transitions, the world of their childhood could be visibly different from the world of their old age. Some researchers argue this instability was a primary driver of human cognitive evolution. Groups that could hold complex knowledge, revise it rapidly, and transmit updated strategies across generations survived, while those that could not adapt fast enough did not. The intelligence that feels distinctly human may be, at its root, a climate adaptation. The acoustic world was as different as the visual one. Before the internal combustion engine and electrical infrastructure, the world was acoustically open in a way it no longer is. The approach of a large animal at a significant distance, bird behavior signaling a predator nearby, and the specific quality of silence indicating something large was very close. These were readable signals in an environment with no background noise to mask them. Early humans read that soundscape fluently with immediate practical comprehension. The forest was talking constantly. They understood the language. They did not know they were living in an ice age. They did not know the mammoths would be gone within a few thousand years. They did not know the land their children played on would become the floor of a shallow sea in a dozen generations. And yet they left evidence of something unmistakably like wonder. Animals were rendered on cave walls with attention to living movement, requiring careful, repeated observation of real subjects in the field. Handprints stenciled across every inhabited continent, saying in the most direct possible language, "I was here." This was my hand. I existed in this place, and I wanted you to know it. The carefully buried dead with grave goods suggesting beliefs about death are deeply recognizable, even across 100,000 years. They looked out at that extraordinary, teeming, unpolluted world, at the mammoths on the tundra, at the Milky Way blazing without competition overhead, and at the coastlines not yet gone under, and felt something we would recognize immediately. We just cannot see what they were seeing, and that, more than anything else, is the loss. If this changed how you think about the world our ancestors actually inhabited, hit like on this video, subscribe for more deep dives into human prehistory, and drop a comment with which part of this lost world struck you most.